topic is so interesting, and I don't know if I even want to say damaging that you guys have tied it to respect, because I feel like you make respect a very tick box exercise. In the face of the aunties, oh wow, you're so respectful, but in the streets, you're not respecting yourself. Do you understand? You're not putting that respect on yourself.
Hello guys, welcome back to our channel. My name is Lucky.
My name is Shanika.
And we are back. It's been a hot minute, and hope you're all doing well and hope everything is fine with you wherever you are in this part of the world. I just want to say that, yeah, thank you very much for following us, for subscribing, and always being supportive of our grind. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we're back again. Gonna shoot another video for today. Of course, we're shooting another video because you can see us that we're shooting a video. Why would I say that? Sometimes I need to behave myself. But yeah, anyways, back to the matter. We're gonna
back to the matter. Open and close. Touch your toes, baby yoga yogi. You know, I used to hear that song, and I still do. But when I hear, well, I don't know if I still do. But whenever you hear "Back to the Matter," it reminds of that.
Back to the matter at hand.
Who's the artist? The band.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, not the band, but I can't remember who's it.
Whiskey.
Wizkid. Okay, fair enough.
Yes. All right. So what are we doing today?
So I think we're actually going to have a bit of a discussion.
A discussion.
Yeah, just talking about a particular area, and we'll probably do a few more of these potentially. And the thing that I guess we're going to talk about today is African aunties and uncles, or just aunties and uncles in general, because there are other cultures that also use these kind of terms to refer to people. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll look at it from in different ways. So I think we can start by just talking about our experience with this. So what's your experience with the term aunties and uncles? And yeah, we'll start there. Let's just start there, and then we'll go into more.
Yeah, I think for me, growing up in Africa and also then coming here, the term auntie and uncle is much more than just a relative thing. It's usually used for anybody that's older than you in your area. Could be your neighbor, or it could be your actual uncle, your actual auntie. I think the line has been blurred a lot, especially moving into the UK, where everybody's called auntie and uncle. Your mom's friend is called your auntie, your dad's friend is called your uncle. So it's like there is no that deep actual connection to the term uncle and auntie. That makes sense. Everybody is called an uncle and auntie. That doesn't mean that they're actually closer to you. It's more easier for parents to just tell their kids to call other people auntie and uncle, which in a way can be a bit misleading for the kids, for the young ones, I would say. And yeah, what about yourself? What is your experience of it?
So I think for me, growing up, there was no obligation to call anybody auntie or uncle in my upbringing personally. I know that there are, like, even some of our family friends, there were some Caribbean people who do use those terms, but I feel like it was especially, well, in my experience, so there's definitely two. So there's experience where there are some Caribbean people who will call women that they come across auntie, auntie this, auntie that. But then there's also some families where they will reserve it for people that they know are close to their mum or their mum's friend or whatever. But for me personally, my own experiences, there was no obligation to call anybody uncle or auntie. Actually, for me, I found that I use those terms if I was speaking about somebody who was one of my parents' uncles or aunties, if that makes sense. So they're quite older than me, etc, etc. And that was just my own experience. So
what do you call your uncle?
My uncle?
Going by his name, don't you?
Yeah, my own, like,
your own special one.
No, yeah, so my uncles and aunties, like, so my parents' relatives, I will just call them by their name.
No respect.
It's not a sign of respect, but we'll get into that. I wouldn't necessarily call them uncle or auntie. This is just by their name.
Why?
There was no obligation to. I was never told, oh, you have to call this person uncle this or auntie this. Every so often I may say uncle something, but that was a choice. It wasn't a requirement or a demand. And I think, yeah, it's interesting what you mentioned about respect, and I think we will get onto that. But for me, I was taught respect. Like, respect for me and my upbringing, it doesn't come in titles, it actually comes in action, the way how you act, the way how you treat somebody. It's not about necessarily how you address them. I know that in some other cultures that is a sign of respect, but I feel like that as a marker of respect definitely has its flaws. Okay, so yeah, that's our different experiences.
Before you continue, I was gonna say, the fact that you are calling your uncle and aunties by their name, is it because you experienced your mom speaking to them by their name? So it was like a normal thing, you saw your mom calling your uncle his name or your auntie their name, that's why you just call them by their name rather than calling them auntie and uncle?
It's interesting you say that, because with me calling my mum's uncles and aunties uncle and auntie, whatever their name would be, she also would address them like that. So that's actually quite interesting in that sense, because I don't know whether I felt like I picked that up from her. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't know if it was an imitation thing. But at the same time, there definitely, as I said, and I have said so many times, there definitely wasn't any obligation for us to call her siblings uncle and auntie, or else we would have got in trouble for not doing that. Or there wasn't any obligation for us to call any of her friends uncle and auntie, or else again we would have got in trouble. And we were, as I said, we were around others who did that, and for us, okay, cool, that's what they do, but it's not a necessity. And also, I think as a child I had an awareness that my mom's friends wasn't my auntie, so I didn't feel any necessity to call them that, if that makes sense. And I knew even when the other family would call my mum auntie, that they weren't her auntie. I knew that she wasn't, but there was no issue with them calling her that as well. Like, I felt like for us growing up, it was always much more of a personal choice than an expectation. And then, as I said, there would be times where maybe I would address my uncle or my auntie with that, not the pronoun or whatever you'd call it, with that title first, and that was also fine as well. So it was very free flowing in that sense. There was no kind of major restrictions.
It's never for us. It's never the respect part of it. It's not just even for your uncle, even your siblings as well. You can't just call, if you're the last born, you can't just call the oldest one by their name. Growing up in a Nigerian home, for me, I'll say in Nigeria. I don't know how it is over here as much. Like, even when I came here, my younger ones, they can't just call me by my name. They have to put a brother before they say my name. It's like in Nigeria, your elders call them sister this or brother this. You can't just say their name without any like respect beforehand. So I feel like there's a big African cultural respect that goes with names and relatives. I feel like that plays a big part on the use of auntie and uncle to address many people.
Interesting. I feel like, for me personally, I feel like it's so interesting, and I don't know if I even want to say damaging, that you guys have tied it to respect, because I feel like you make respect a very tick box exercise, because all you really have to do is X, Y, and Z to show that you respect. And so sometimes I've witnessed and observed that then people would tend to do the bare minimum as a sign of respect, as opposed to genuinely respecting somebody. I think basically for me, the teaching of respect was very much more generic as opposed to for specific people. And I feel like, even as you have explained in regards to like maybe the eldest sibling or aunties or uncles or whatever, what then tends to happen is that there are groups of people who become not respected, like maybe children, or maybe people that don't fall into those categories that you are told to respect, if that makes sense. But yeah, whereas for us, generic respect was generic, so there was nobody that you respect is for everybody, basically. Like, that's how it was. Of course you respect your elders, we understand that. But yeah, there's a way how you kind of just treat people fairly, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's very interesting what you said about the respect for children actually being missed in that respect hierarchy that there is. I feel like that's a very, very common things that it's much more difficult for adults or parents to value the thoughts or the emotions of a child, because I feel like they're young and no need for, they don't respect them as much, or they don't respect their opinions as much because they're younger. But yeah, I think one thing that is good, I understand when you did say that it becomes like just a tight tick box exercise, but I do feel like it's a good place to start with respect. Living it that way becomes an issue, but I feel like it's a good way to start helping children identify who is who in the society, or who is who around them. That can help, can be like a beginning of the journey of respecting and reverencing others. But I feel like if it's left in that place, it's just in them as auntie and uncle, not actually explaining to them the need for them to respect them and why they should be respected, then I feel like that becomes build up resentment to the younger ones or the kids that have to do it, and they get to a stage whereby it becomes just something that they do as a way to tick box. As a way to just do it just because that's what everybody is doing, rather than within them actually feeling that sense of honoring and respecting their elders or their auntie and their uncle. I feel like it's really important that it's passed down, the idea of respect being a two-way thing rather than a one-way system. I feel like a lot of time in African culture, respect is seen as a one-way to the top as a system. That makes sense. I feel like that's really, really key that you've touched on that, and I can say myself that I can resonate with the fact that if you're the youngest, it feels like you're the one that just respecting everyone and calling everybody brother, sister, auntie, uncle, or when you finish eating, you're the only one that has to greet everybody else. Nobody greets you because you're the youngest. Again, if it's not reciprocated, you can reciprocated. I hope that's the correct English. If it's not reciprocated,
yay! Now you're saying it wrong. Reciprocated.
If it's not reciprocated, then you might begin to feel resentful about it. It's like you have to do it. Like, why am I always just doing it, but nobody's doing the same? Nobody's respecting me when I do something. I'm always the one trying to respect the older ones, calling them brother, calling them sister. There is a place for that, definitely, but I feel like it should not just end there. It should be, it should not just end there. It should be an all-rounded thing, the idea of respect.
I think that's interesting when you touch on the resentment side of it, because also what happens is, and what I've witnessed and heard, is that maybe an auntie or an uncle will say, I like this one, they're so respectful. And when they're saying that, a lot of the time they're basing it on the fact that, because that person did greet me as auntie, or because they're doing the right things in their presence. But then as a peer of that person, you see the way that they maybe conduct themselves, or the way that they carry themselves, or they speak about particular things or whatever outside of the presence of that auntie. You think to yourself, you've got no idea. And I think for me, that's where like the way how I was taught about respect is not just in the presence of certain people. Do you know what I mean? Like you can be so focused on respecting others that you don't respect yourself, and that's the problem when it comes to how I see like the tick box thing. Because then what happens is in the face of the aunties, wow, you're so respectful, but in the streets, you're not respecting yourself. Do you understand? You're not putting that respect on yourself. Really, you're doing tick box. Do you get?
It's like you become a pleaser of people rather than actually pleasing yourself, or not just pleasing yourself, but actually doing it properly. You're just doing it to get the approval, to make them think that you are nice when you're not nice.
Do you know what? No, but it's so true. And do you know what? Now this has made me think of it's almost like, as you said, because respect can seem so one way and it doesn't come back down, maybe there's a way how these certain people, whether they're the youngest or they're just people in those communities, they internalize this reality that they don't deserve respect. Because sometimes it can be so confusing that in the eyes of the auntie or the person you're supposed to respect, you're so respectful, but then outside of their sight, you genuinely have not grasped
the idea of what respect actually is.
Do you get? And so I wonder, that's actually, it's almost like it's put something together that I never saw before. Like maybe that is why, like the resentment could lead to not taking that time to even respect yourself, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think another side to the whole auntie and uncle thing is, in my opinion, I feel like, so obviously in terms of like family, your auntie is your mum or your father's sibling usually, your uncle the same thing, but yeah. So yeah, just maybe westernized, I don't know, but you know, in terms of family relation, that's who an auntie would be or who an uncle would be. I feel like sometimes when you're used to calling anybody an uncle or an auntie, I also feel like there's a way how this then almost like gives them permission to, like, I don't know how to explain it. Maybe they feel entitled to a role that they shouldn't necessarily have, if that makes sense. But because they have that title, do you know what I mean? So I feel like it almost blurs the lines.
You're basically saying that because you call them auntie and uncle, they feel like they have the right to start imposing on your life and to giving you advice that they don't warrant to give, or they're not even qualified to give, but because you respect them and calling them auntie and uncle, they feel they can come and start telling you what you're wearing is not nice, and that boy is not a good boy, don't date him, and when are you getting married, and why are you not inviting me to your wedding? Things like that. They feel like they're entitlement for it, and they expect you to just bow at their feet and do whatever they've asked you to do.
Yeah, when really they're like, okay, I don't want to say this because it's gonna be rude, but it's like, who are you?
Well, it's true. It's like I get where you're coming from. It's like they don't really know you well. They don't know your struggles. They don't really understand your family dynamics. But just because you know they're your mom's friend, who you never see very often, they can easily just feel like entitled to start diving into your life where they don't need to. If you get what I mean?
Yeah, that side of it can definitely be quite problematic in my opinion, because sometimes it's kind of like know your place. Do you know what I mean? Like, take care of your family. Don't worry about this one or the other one. Do you understand? And a lot of the time that can be the case as well. It's like they're getting involved in other people's business. Bear in mind their own child is doing what, you know. So there's that side of it as well. No, but this is the thing. It's the case. It's the case because it's not just like, obviously I have friends who, you know, I've heard these things as well. Do you know what I mean? And so yeah, so I feel like, yeah, there's one thing addressing people as auntie and uncle, then I feel like there's another thing of how what role that person plays in their life, or what authority they believe that they hold in your family or your children's lives. So yeah, if we look at maybe some pros and cons, you know, from your perspective, what would you say some of the pros are of this kind of setup?
I feel like one of the pros for me is it says like a foundation to build respect, to teach a child how to be respectful and how to honor others who are above them, who are older than them. I feel like that's one of the advantages that I've picked up growing up. It's a way that I've learned to start respecting people by calling them auntie or uncle, and it just basically teaches you a way to be courteous towards others. That makes sense. That's for me. That's one thing I've picked up, and just to respect everyone. I've not just restricted it to just auntie and uncle. I treat everyone with that kind of respect because that foundation has been laid in for me to respect people. Although it's been usually respect elders, but with my growing and experience in life, I've taken it to the point of actually using the same way to respect everyone. For me, I feel like that's one of the pros of it. It can give a child or a young person a foundation to learn how to honor people and how to respect people. That's a foundation, not the only thing. You have to build upon that, of course, through your genuine attitude and your genuine respect for that person. So it gives you people an opportunity for them to start respecting you. That makes sense. If you're respecting them, that will also give them an incentive to also respect you and treat you well and treat you fairly. Well, I don't know if this is always the case, but I feel like it can also bridge that gap between the two, to the young person and the older person. If the young person is showing a sense of honoring, it can also be reciprocated as well. So that's also another advantage, I would say.
I think one of the things I would say is that obviously we do acknowledge that these terms were originally predominantly used in a society where like community it looks, they were used in a society where things look very different to what they may look like here in the Western world or in the UK. So I understand how maybe having a neighbor around or having close friends and family, it felt maybe a lot more natural to call them auntie as well, because they have that strong sense of community where you are as good as family. So I do get and I do appreciate that, and I'm not even diminishing that. I just feel like actually the connotation or attaching it to respect, I think, becomes an issue personally. So yeah, I think I agree with you in terms of the pro, I believe.
I don't necessarily think attaching to respect is an issue, but I feel like if that's your only fun based on basis of respect, then that's what the issue is. Like, it can be a form of respect, but if that's the only form,
it's not the full story. It's part of it.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. Yeah, it can be a form of respect, but actually, if that's the only way you respect people, by just calling them auntie and uncle, and when they've gone back, you don't care. And there's a bit of an issue there.
Yeah, I hear that. Okay, cool. Are there any cons? I mean, we've kind of spoken about most of the cons in this video, but just maybe summarize.
Yeah, in terms of cons, I think there can be a lot of cons with anything that has to do with respect, because it can always be abused. One of the things I would say is, for example, blurring the lines of actually how close a person is to you. I feel like if a child is brought up to call everybody auntie and uncle, again, it will affect how well it can affect the child's perspective of the closeness to that adult, if that makes sense. And
what role they play in the child's life.
Yes, basically. And in a way, both empowering the person, the auntie and uncle, to feel like they can impute in the child's life, tell them what to do, and also on the other hand, making the child feel like they have to listen to everything that the uncle and auntie says, because the uncle and auntie tend to be wiser in the eyes of how it's being portrayed.
I think I would add, I think one of the cons of it is that at times, obviously not every time, but at times, it very much limits what respect is, and it can mean that aunties and uncles don't show respect to younger people or to children, whereas respect should be reciprocal. So I think that is a bit of a con, because it does a disservice to those young people who are potentially going out of their way to respect someone and getting nothing back in return. And that is quite damaging for someone's kind of personality and for their mental health and their psychology as well. It's really quite damaging in regards to that can then impact how they see themselves and whether or not they believe they deserve respect. And also it should be taught that respect is given on a peer level as well, because then what you may find is that actually when those children grow up, that the men do not respect their women very greatly, like on a peer level, like those who may be of the same age to them, because they haven't practiced that, if that makes sense. So I think it is just very important that we can try and find a way to redeem how we teach respect in these kind of communities and these settings.
That's good.
So I guess the final part of this is just us discussing whether or not we will be implementing auntie and uncle usage for our children. Now I will start. I think
we actually have not discussed this, so yeah.
Oh, I thought we had. I think we have briefly, but not properly. But I think to begin with, I was almost like so against it, because I didn't want. Because one, I'm very aware that there are so many people that are not my child's auntie. Why are they calling them auntie? If that makes sense. Like for me, I just felt like it's not necessary, because it's not the case. If that makes sense, I'm quite a literal person. So I was just like. I think, of course, if they are our close friends and obviously their family, but if they are close friends, I have less of an issue with it. I feel like when it comes to like complete strangers, I find that a little bit more unnecessary personally, because I don't know, like I feel like that it is a bit confusing for the kid, and I just don't necessarily find it that necessary if they are a stranger that, you know, they may never see again and stuff like that. But how do I feel about it now? I feel like in a way that it might just like there may just be, it might just happen. Like, I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of a lot more used to it now. So, I don't know, it's quite hard to say, I don't know. What do you think? Do you feel like you are going to implement, you know, the whole idea that your child must call elders auntie and uncle?
I'll say I've always seen as a yes thing, yeah. I just feel like it's easier for the children, but then again, it's more so helping them understand why they're calling this person auntie and uncle, not just say auntie and uncle. You have to teach them that it's a sign of respect in the first place. It's a sign of respect, and
it's not the ultimate.
It's not the ultimate thing. More so, how you behave and how you act is the most way you respect other people. But as a way of honoring them for being older than you, you can call them auntie and uncle. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're close to you, or they're very close to you. If that makes sense. For close relative, definitely call them auntie and uncle, because you have to respect them and respect the same family and things like that. And close friends as well. And I guess the kids growing up, the more friends will come along, the more that we know them. If that makes sense. Our friends who are around us probably be safe around our kids. So
what I would quickly say, sorry, is quite interesting, because I think in my experience growing up, from like a Caribbean perspective potentially, but we'll just leave it to my experience. When it comes to somebody that's a close friend of the family, we would usually call them a family friend, or maybe just my mum's friend, for example. Whereas what I found with my African friends is that they would call them their auntie, but then you'd be like, oh, okay, so like, is that your mum's sibling or your dad's sibling? And then they'll be like, oh no, it's just my auntie. Like, they're not actually my auntie, but da-da-da-da-da. And so it's interesting because, as you know, there is always that side of things where it's like, is this person related to you, or they just, do you know what I mean? Like, but yeah.
It's true, it's interesting. Yeah, I think, we will just have to, I think what's important for us is actually teaching the kids to understand what it is to honor people and how to respect people. Auntie is just it's a title, but there's much more beyond that.
Yeah. Are you kind of saying that the whole calling someone auntie or uncle is not necessarily explained to a child why, they're just told to call them that? Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so I feel like basically, I hope that I have a much more healthy view of auntie and uncle now than, well, I still hold my opinions, but it's more about, okay, so how do I align myself with this way of addressing people? And I feel like, as you've mentioned, and you know, coupled with my own upbringing and experience of respect, it's going to be important for us to not just have these ways of addressing people as like the most important way and the only way to respect, but to have it as part of the bigger picture. And so yeah, I just think it is really important to.
Thank you guys, hope you've enjoyed us discussing on this. These are just some things that goes on in our head, and we just try to bring it to you guys and see if it will trigger some conversations amongst yourself. Let us know in the comment section below, what's your view on the use of the word auntie and uncle? What's your experience about using them? Is this something that you've just been doing since you were born, or did someone actually teach you to know the reasons behind why you call people auntie or uncle or brother or sister instead of just saying their name?
Do you think it's a positive thing or a negative thing? Is it something that you would think about implementing in the life of your children as well? And yeah, I think it's always good to just consider the pros and cons of things as well, as opposed to blindly accepting things. So yeah, and I think, you know, we're at an age, a variety of our viewers will also be at an age where it's kind of like, oh snap, like we do think about these things, we do talk about these things. We are now being addressed as aunties and uncles, which is interesting because yeah, whenever I'm around his family, the younger children would address me as auntie this, and there is something that I actually like about it, but I don't really ever feel that they are required to call me that. If they just call me my name, I'm not gonna be, hey, you know, you don't have respect, you know, I'm not going to be.
I will be like that. I can call her by name. Are you okay?
But this is my problem. It's like, it's my name. Like, is it not my name?
You have to put a respect on
Is it not my name? Do you get? Like, by now, what happens is people's names are dismissed. You know, you forget it. Your name is no longer your name. Now you're this, now you're that. You're defined by this, you're defined by that.
They do say your name though, they don't just say Auntie.
No, but okay, so this is just the tip of the iceberg, baby. But there are other ways how I find that African people address people by titles over their name. So it's almost
honorable.
Like it's almost like you become defined by your title, then your name is just
doctor,
do you know what I mean?
Banker,
but anyway, what was you gonna
lawyer.
say? Yeah, banker, bank manager, conductor, mama this.
I was just gonna say that me myself, I think I've been called uncle by Africans for a long time, even since I was like 14, 15. People always call me uncle because they think of the way I act mature, I act older. Again, that's like also the mindset that people have used to the term uncle. But yeah,
it's funny though, because Lucky always called people auntie, etc. Some people get offended even when he calls them auntie. Maybe their connotation of auntie is an older person, a nagging person, or what? Who knows? But then I remember when we first met, you always call me miss this, miss that. Hello miss, how are you? And I told him, please stop calling me that. Miss? Huh? I was like, please stop.
I want you to be my boyfriend. Don't be calling me miss.
It's not even that. I just feel like there's a part of it that I feel like removes intimacy, if that makes sense. So I feel like there's always these barriers. You have to come in this particular way. I'm just like, approach me with who you are. Don't worry about first having to say auntie or having to say miss.
We have to cut it now. We have to cut it now.
Why?
This is a conversation for another time. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. Please click the like, share, subscribe, have conversations, and let us know what you think. Until next time, take care, stay blessed. Bye bye.